Hello and welcome to earlymusicsources.com. My name is Elam Rotem, and today, together with my friends from Profeti della Quinta, we will have a look at one of the most touching chansons of the 16th century, Mille Regrets by Josquin des Prez. This year, early music lovers celebrated the 500-year anniversary of Josquin des Prez's death. I thought that we could join them by looking at a short four-voice chanson of his that has moved many with its sweet, addictive melancholy. The name of the chanson is Mille Regrets, 1,000 Regrets. We will analyze the piece, perform it, and see how the Spanish composer Cristóbal de Morales ripped it off to create a complete Catholic Mass. Let's start. We should probably start by stating that the attribution of the chanson Mille Regrets to Josquin is not absolutely certain. While there are no less than 24 16th century sources containing the piece, all from well after Josquin's death, only two mention Josquin as its author. The first attribution is to a 1538 Vihuela da Mano arrangement, where it is also referred to as the Song of the Emperor. And the second is from a 1549 Flemish collection. Important scholars agree that Mille Regrets might indeed not be by Josquin. However, in the absence of a serious candidate, for now, we will keep referring to it as a piece by Josquin. Let's start by having a look at its sad text. Emma will kindly read it for us.
Mille regrets de vous abandonner et d'élonger votre fâche amoureuse. J'ai si grand deuil et peine douloureuse qu'on me verra brief mes jours définés.
While in the poetry of the later Italian madrigal genre, the speaker rarely assumes responsibility for their bad fate, around 1500 such texts dealing with regrets were not uncommon. Let's now see if the mode of the piece is appropriate for this highly melancholic text. To try to work out the mode, we will first look at the beginning and end of the piece. It starts with three voices singing E, and the ending, which as we'll see later is rather odd, finishes similarly with a peculiar E-based harmony. The range of the voices, more or less from E to E in the tenor and canto, and a fifth lower in the alto and bass, confirms that we might be in the third mode, the Phrygian mode. According to at least some contemporary theoreticians, the third mode is appropriate for lamentations and mournful subjects, which fits perfectly with our text. An issue that I find especially relevant when looking at Mille Regrets is musica ficta, the obligatory or voluntary addition of accidentals that are not originally written in the score. If you don't know what this is, do check out our episode about it. It seems to me almost as if Josquin was trying to fool us in this regard. You will see what I mean. Here is the opening of the piece, 1,000 Regrets at Deserting You. Let's listen. As you might remember, according to common musica ficta guidelines, in cadential progressions there should be a major sixth between the tenorizans and cantizans, and if it's not composed in that way to begin with, the performers should alter the notes themselves. Here we have a cadential progression right at the beginning, tenorizans in the bass and cantizans in the tenor. However, we cannot really modify this minor sixth into a major one as we supposedly should. On the one hand, if we alter the lower note and add a B flat, we create a bad melodic line. Da-dee-da-da-ta-ta. On the other hand, if we alter the higher note by adding a G sharp, we also create a bad interval. Ta-ta-ta-ta. This might be solved by adding an F sharp just before, which would in turn lead to a terrible false relation with the top line. So, as you heard, we decided to leave the notes as they are, as following the standard Musica Ficta rules didn't seem right. Let's listen to how it continues. We see that the top voice has the same melody twice, and that it includes a typical cantizans progression. The first time evaded with the resolution missing, and the second time complete. A trained singer reading from his part might automatically add G and F sharp to it, especially the second time when the cadence is complete. When considering the other voices, however, we see that both cadences are in fact evaded. The tenorizans doesn't go a step down, and the cantizans and bassizans have a pause. The singer may add G and F sharp, fine, but in the second cadence this is simply impossible due to the C in the bass, which would not under any circumstance tolerate a G sharp, an augmented fifth. So while it is theoretically possible to add the ficta on the first cadence, not having it on the second one would be too much of a disappointment, even in this terribly sad song. This is what I meant by suggesting that perhaps Josquin was messing with us, forcing us not to apply the rules of Musica Ficta. Who knows, maybe the disappointment of not having the expected notes is what he was going for. Let's continue with the music. Your loving face is repeated twice in different trio textures. The second time, it is composed with descending parallel sixth chords, a technique sometimes referred to as faux bourdon. Later in the 16th century, this trait will be associated with older music, and thus used mainly when negative emotions are called for. On I Feel Such Great Sadness, the voices for the first time are moving all together. This very simple compositional tool, sometimes referred to as the rhetorical figure noema, emphasizes the text in a very effective way. It is followed by descending duets on And Such Painful Sorrow. Here the cadential progressions are clear and not contradicted by anything. Thus, the singers may add the typical musica ficta without much doubt, along with typical small cadential ornaments if they so wish. We now arrive at the end of the chanson. The pain is so great that it seems to me that my days will soon dwindle away. After a quick use of typical canonic material, he renders the final phrase in different ways. Eventually, all the voices come together and repeat it again 3 times. On the last repeat, the music is a bit different, and the top voice tragically goes to the minor third, creating an extremely sad and miserable ending. Let's listen. This ending is truly very sad, partially because of our expectation of a final major harmony. Indeed, most pieces from that period, and definitely from later in the 16th century and until the middle of the 17th century, had to end with a major harmony. But some pieces from around 1500, especially in this mode, call for a minor harmony at the end. In some cases, it can be overcome by applying musica ficta, but in some, clearly not. Specifically in our case, this ending and the other musica ficta doubts that we discussed are all eliminated by the many lute intabulations of this piece from throughout the 16th century. We will hear some examples in a bit. In any case, whether it's because of what our ears are used to hearing or not, this ending is sweetly unsatisfying. Normally, I'd send you to listen to the complete performance by yourself, but since it's so short, we might as well listen to it together. If you fell in love with this piece, know that you are not alone. Throughout the 16th century, many musicians were inspired by it. There was even a Catholic Mass ripoff. Let's see. Typically, a well-loved song in the 16th century would be the object of many arrangements and ornamented versions. Such is the case of Mille Regrets, with 9 different arrangements for plucked instruments and 1 for keyboard. Here, for example, is an arrangement printed in a 1552 Flemish collection, where only a few diminutions were added to the original vocal parts. Ryosuke Sakamoto will play it for us. And here is an earlier print from 1533 by the German lute player Hans Gerle, which has even more florid diminutions. As we mentioned, these intabulations, apart from allowing instrumentalists to also enjoy, shed light on musica ficta taste and practices. They show exactly what sharps and flats were added or not added by musicians. You might have noticed how the short F leading to the final G on the top part were in both versions sharpened. In fact, in all versions but 2, this is the case. And in no version is the final G sharpened. all end on a surprising and heartbreaking minor chord. In addition to instrumental arrangements, some composers wrote their own versions of Mille Regrets, different independent pieces, which however remained strongly influenced by Josquin's version. In one case, a complete 6-voice Catholic Mass was composed based on the music of Mille Regrets. Such a composition is sometimes referred to as a parody Mass or imitation Mass. In such pieces, the polyphonic Mass borrows some musical material from an existing piece. Sometimes it is rather subtle, but in some cases, like in Cristobal de Morales' Mass based on Mille Regrets, it is not subtle at all. What he did was very simple. He took the top line of the chanson, replaced its text with the Mass text, and then composed the other voices beneath it. You might be wondering what he did when the short melody of the chanson reached its end and more Mass text needed to be said. Well, he simply repeated the melody again as many times as needed in order to include the entire Mass text. This is a rather extreme case of such an imitation Mass, and the final outcome is almost like a never-ending Mille Regrets, a complete pleasure. This was our show about Josquin's Mille Regrets. I guess that if you must have 1,000 regrets, let them at least be as sweet as Josquin's. Many thanks to Giovanna, Doron, Jacob and Ryusuke for their singing and playing. I also want to invite you to listen to a version of Emma Lisa Roux, where she sings the top line and accompanies herself on the lute, in a practice well documented throughout the 16th century. Don't forget to check the special page on our website with all the footnotes and other extra information. If you enjoy Early Music Sources, consider supporting us on Patreon. Comment, share and like. See you next time at earlymusicsources.com.
Only one tone, yes. Sometimes I'm happy. I'm happy that it's only half a tone. Oh yeah, only half a tone, not a third.